The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of the Veterans Affairs office in San Diego as Marcus Thompson stepped out of his weathered pickup truck. At 52, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had seen more than most, though the years had softened the sharp edges that military life once carved into his frame. His graying beard was neatly trimmed, and despite wearing simple jeans and a plain black t-shirt, something about his posture suggested a lifetime of discipline. Marcus had come to the VA office for a routine appointment regarding his disability benefits. The paperwork was endless, the bureaucracy frustrating, but he endured it all with the same patience he had learned during countless hours of waiting in the military. As he walked toward the building, he noticed a small crowd gathering near the entrance. "That's him right there," a voice called out sharply from behind him. Marcus turned to see a young man in his 20s pointing directly at him. The man wore a crisp navy uniform with SEAL trident gleaming on his chest. Beside him stood two military police officers, their faces stern and businesslike. "Sir, we need you to stop right there," one of the MPs commanded, his hand resting casually on his radio. Marcus complied immediately, raising his hand slightly to show he posed no threat. "Is there a problem, officers?" The young SEAL stepped forward, his chest puffed with righteous indignation. "You bet there's a problem. I'm Petty Officer Second Class Jake Morrison, and I've been tracking you for weeks. You've been telling people around town that you're a Navy SEAL. Haven't you?" Marcus looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Morrison shot back. "My buddy saw you at the Blue Moon Bar last week, telling everyone about your SEAL training, your missions overseas. You even claimed you served with Team 6. That's stolen valor, mister, and it's a federal crime." The MPs moved closer, one of them already reaching for his handcuffs. A small crowd of veterans and VA employees had begun to gather, watching the confrontation unfold. Marcus felt the familiar weight of being judged, the same feeling he had experienced so many times when people questioned his military service simply because he didn't fit their expectations. "Officers, I need you to listen to me carefully," Marcus said, his voice remaining calm despite the gravity of the situation. "I never claimed to be a SEAL to anyone at any bar. There's been a serious mistake here." Morrison laughed bitterly. "Right. That's what they all say when they get caught. You probably bought some fake medals on eBay and thought you could fool everyone. Well, guess what? Real SEALs look out for each other, and we don't tolerate frauds like you." The first MP stepped forward with the handcuffs. "Sir, you're under arrest for violation of the Stolen Valor Act. You have the right to remain silent." As the cold metal clicked around Marcus's wrists, he couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. The very organization he had served with distinction for over 2 decades was now arresting him based on the accusations of someone who had clearly never seen real combat. The young SEAL before him had the look of fresh training, unmarked by the weight of actual warfare. "This is really happening," Marcus muttered to himself as he was led toward the patrol car. Morrison followed closely, still running his mouth. "You disgust me, you know that? While real warriors are out there putting their lives on the line, you're sitting in bars pretending to be something you're not. How many free drinks did you get with your fake stories? How many women were impressed by your phony heroics?" Marcus remained silent, knowing that anything he said would only make the situation worse. As they reached the patrol car, one of the MPs opened the rear door and guided him inside. Through the window, he could see more people gathering, some taking pictures with their phones. The story would probably be all over social media within the hour. Another faker caught red-handed. The drive to the military police station was conducted in tense silence. Marcus stared out the window at the familiar streets of San Diego, a city where he had spent so many years of his life. He thought about his wife, Sarah, who would be horrified when she learned of his arrest. He thought about his 2 children, both adults now, who might see their father's name dragged through the mud in the news. At the station, the booking process was efficient and humiliating. Fingerprints, photographs, personal effects confiscated and cataloged. Marcus answered the questions put to him with simple, direct responses, offering no resistance and no elaboration. The desk sergeant was professional but clearly disapproving, treating him like just another attention-seeking fraud. "You'll be held pending a preliminary hearing," the sergeant informed him. "The investigating officer will want to speak with you shortly." Marcus was placed in a small holding cell, its concrete walls painted an institutional green that reminded him of dozens of military facilities he had known over the years. He sat on the narrow metal bench and tried to process what had just happened to him. The irony was almost too much to bear. Here he was, a man who had given the best years of his life to his country, being treated like a common criminal because of a misunderstanding. He had never been one to boast about his service, never been the type to wear his achievements on his sleeve. In fact, he had spent most of his civilian life trying to blend in, to be just another face in the crowd. But somewhere along the way, someone had gotten the wrong impression. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, the way he responded to certain situations with the instinctive reactions of someone with military training. Maybe it was something he had said that was misinterpreted or taken out of context. An hour later, the cell door opened, and a military investigator entered. He was a middle-aged man with the bearing of someone who had seen many cases of stolen valor over the years. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez. I'm here to investigate the charges against you. Petty Officer Morrison has provided us with a detailed statement about your alleged claims of SEAL service. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that?" Marcus looked up at the investigator, measuring his words carefully. "Chief, I need you to understand something very important. I have never at any time claimed to be a Navy SEAL. If someone believes I made such claims, then there has been a serious miscommunication somewhere." Rodriguez consulted his notes. "According to the witness statement, you were observed at a local establishment discussing SEAL training, overseas missions, and specifically claimed association with SEAL Team 6. Are you denying these statements were made?" "I'm denying that I claim to be a SEAL, yes, sir." "But you don't deny discussing military operations or training?" Marcus hesitated. This was where things got complicated. "Chief, I did serve in the military. I served for 23 years. If someone overheard me talking about my actual service and misinterpreted what I was saying, that's not stolen valor. That's a misunderstanding." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "What was your actual service, Mr. Thompson? I'd prefer to have my attorney present before we go any further with this discussion." The investigator nodded. "That's your right, but I'll tell you this much. We take stolen valor very seriously here. If you're guilty of impersonating a SEAL, you're looking at federal charges, possible jail time, and a permanent criminal record. If you want to come clean now, it might go easier for you." After Rodriguez left, Marcus was alone with his thoughts again. He knew that the truth would come out eventually, but the process was going to be painful for everyone involved. His family would have to endure the shame and publicity. His reputation in the community would be damaged, perhaps permanently. But what bothered him most was the young SEAL who had instigated this whole mess. Morrison represented everything that was wrong with the new military: quick to judge, eager for glory, more concerned with his image than with the truth. Marcus had known hundreds of SEALs over the years, and most of them would have handled this situation very differently. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself thinking about his old teammates, wondering what they would say if they knew where he was right now. Some of them were still active duty, others had retired to quiet lives like his own. A few had died in the line of duty, their names now etched on memorial walls that Marcus visited every year. The holding cell began to fill with the sounds of the evening shift change. New voices echoed through the corridor, new footsteps on the polished concrete floor. Marcus had learned long ago to find peace in difficult situations, to use quiet moments for reflection rather than panic. He thought about the mission that had changed everything, the operation that most people would never know about. He thought about the men who had died that day, the impossible choices that had to be made, the weight of command in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. These were not the kinds of stories you told in bars to impress strangers. These were the kinds of memories that woke you up in the middle of the night, sweating and gasping for breath. They were the reasons why so many veterans struggled to readjust to civilian life, why the simple act of grocery shopping could sometimes feel more stressful than a combat mission. As night fell over the military police station, Marcus Thompson sat in his cell and waited for tomorrow. He knew that when the truth finally came out, it would shock everyone involved. But he also knew that some truths were worth waiting for, no matter how long the wait might be. The young SEAL who had caused all this trouble was probably at home right now, feeling proud of himself for catching another faker. He had no idea that he had just arrested one of the most decorated and respected warriors in modern military history. But tomorrow would bring new revelations, and with them, a reckoning that none of them were prepared for. The next morning brought a flurry of activity to the military police station. Word of the Stolen Valor arrest had spread quickly through the local military community, and Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez found his desk piled high with paperwork and phone calls from superiors wanting updates on the case. Marcus Thompson had spent a restless night in the holding cell, but his demeanor remained calm and dignified when Rodriguez returned to interview him again. This time, he was accompanied by a public defender, a young woman named Lisa Chen, who specialized in military cases. "My client is prepared to cooperate fully," Chen announced as they settled into the small interview room. "But we want to make it clear from the start that Mr. Thompson has never claimed to be a Navy SEAL." Rodriguez opened his file and spread several documents across the metal table. "Let's start with the basics, then. Mr. Thompson, what was your actual military service?" Marcus glanced at his attorney, who nodded encouragingly. "I served 23 years in the United States Navy. I enlisted in 1982 and retired in 2005. What was your rate and final rank?" "I was a special warfare operator, senior chief petty officer." Rodriguez paused, his pen hovering over his notepad. Special warfare operator was the official designation for Navy SEALs. "Are you telling me you actually were a SEAL?" "Yes, sir. SEAL Team 2 later transferred to DevGru." The room fell silent. DevGru was the official name for what was commonly known as SEAL Team 6, the most elite unit in naval special warfare. Rodriguez set down his pen and stared at Marcus for a long moment. "If this is true, why didn't you say so yesterday?" "Because, Chief, I've learned over the years that when someone accuses you of lying about military service, the best thing to do is let the facts speak for themselves. Too many real veterans have been harassed by people who think they know what a warrior is supposed to look like." Lisa Chen pulled out a manila folder. "We've brought documentation to support my client's claims. Here are his DD-214 discharge papers, his service record, and several commendation certificates." Rodriguez examined the documents carefully. The DD-214 was legitimate. He could tell that much immediately. The service record showed a progression through various SEAL teams and advanced training schools that would be impossible to fake. But what really caught his attention were the decorations listed: Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device, Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters, Navy Cross. "Mr. Thompson," Rodriguez said slowly, "these are some serious decorations. The Navy Cross is the second highest award for valor in combat." Marcus nodded. "Somalia, 1993. My team was tasked with recovering prisoners from a warlord's compound. The mission went sideways, and we had to fight our way out. Lost 2 good men that day." Rodriguez was beginning to feel very uncomfortable about this case. He had seen plenty of stolen valor cases over the years, but he had never encountered someone with this level of documentation who turned out to be legitimate. "Chief," Lisa Chen interjected, I think we need to discuss the circumstances that led to this arrest. My client was accused by a junior petty officer based entirely on hearsay and assumption. No one actually heard him claim to be a SEAL. Rodriguez consulted his notes again. Petty Officer Morrison stated that a reliable witness observed Mr. Thompson at a local bar, discussing SEAL operations and claiming service with Team 6. Did anyone ask this witness exactly what was said? Marcus asked. Because I have a pretty good idea what actually happened. Over the next hour, Marcus recounted the evening at the Blue Moon Bar that had apparently led to his arrest. He had been there with his neighbor, Tom Williams, who was also a military veteran. Tom had been telling Marcus about his son, who was going through SEAL training at Bud S. Tom was asking me about what his son might expect, Marcus explained. The kid was struggling, and Tom wanted to know if I thought he had what it takes to make it through. I shared some general observations about SEAL training, nothing classified or inappropriate. And the Team 6 reference? Rodriguez asked. Marcus sighed. Tom specifically asked me about his son's dream of joining the most elite unit. I told him that DevGru selects from experienced SEALs, that his son would need to establish himself in the teams first. Someone sitting nearby might have overheard fragments of that conversation and jumped to conclusions. Rodriguez was starting to see how the misunderstanding could have occurred. A civilian overhearing a partial conversation between two veterans might easily misinterpret what was being discussed. Why didn't you correct the record when Petty Officer Morrison confronted you yesterday? Chief, when someone accuses you of stolen valor, especially in public, anything you say in your own defense sounds like desperation. I've seen real veterans get torn apart on social media because they tried to prove their service to people who had already made up their minds. Lisa Chen leaned forward. There's another issue here that needs to be addressed. My client's service record includes several classified operations. His identity and service details may be protected information that shouldn't be publicly disclosed. This was a complication Rodriguez hadn't considered. If Marcus Thompson had been involved in sensitive operations during his SEAL career, there might be legitimate security reasons for keeping his background quiet. I need to make some phone calls, Rodriguez announced. This interview is suspended pending verification of these documents. After Marcus and his attorney were escorted back to the holding area, Rodriguez immediately contacted the Naval Special Warfare Command. The conversation that followed left him deeply unsettled. Senior Chief Thompson, the voice on the other end of the line said. You arrested Marcus Thompson? Jesus Christ, Chief, do you have any idea who you're holding? That's what I'm trying to find out, sir. Hold on, I need to get my commander on the line. This is way above my pay grade. 20 minutes later, Rodriguez found himself on a conference call with several high-ranking officers, including a full captain who sounded both amused and concerned. Chief Rodriguez, this is Captain Mitchell at NS Dollar's command. I need you to understand something very clearly. Senior Chief Thompson is not just any former SEAL. He's a legend in our community. The man has more confirmed kills than some entire platoons. He was personally decorated by 3 different presidents. Rodriguez felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. Sir, he was arrested based on accusations of stolen valor. We had a witness statement. From who? Some boot who's been in the teams for 5 minutes. Chief, Marcus Thompson was conducting classified operations before most of these kids were born. He's exactly the kind of quiet professional who would never brag about his service, which is probably why some idiot mistook his humility for deception. The captain's tone became more serious. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to release Senior Chief Thompson immediately with a full apology. Then you're going to investigate how this cluster got started in the first place. And Chief, this better not leak to the press because if it does, there are going to be some very senior people asking very uncomfortable questions about your department's procedures. After ending the call, Rodriguez sat in his office for several minutes, trying to process what he had just learned. He had arrested one of the most decorated SEALs in recent history based on the accusations of a junior sailor who apparently didn't know what he was talking about. Meanwhile, word was spreading through the military community that something significant was happening at the MP station. Several senior NCOs had called asking about the arrest, and Rodriguez was starting to understand that Marcus Thompson was known and respected throughout the special operations community. The door to his office opened, and his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Stevens, walked in with a grim expression. "Rodriguez, what the hell is going on here? I just got a call from a Navy admiral asking why we're holding one of their most decorated veterans on bogus charges. Sir, we acted on credible information suggesting that the suspect was impersonating a SEAL. The witness seemed reliable and... The witness is a 22-year-old kid who's been in the Navy for 3 years, Stevens interrupted. Meanwhile, the man you arrested has a service record that reads like a Tom Clancy novel. Do you understand the magnitude of this screw-up?" Rodriguez nodded miserably. "Yes, sir. I'm processing the release paperwork now. You better pray to whatever God you believe in that Senior Chief Thompson is understanding about this situation. Because if he decides to raise hell about it, there are going to be consequences for everyone involved." As Rodriguez prepared to return to the holding area, he reflected on how quickly the situation had changed. 12 hours ago, he thought he was investigating a straightforward case of stolen valor. Now he was about to release a man whose legitimate service record made him look like a character from a military thriller novel. But there was still the question of Petty Officer Morrison, the young SEAL who had instigated the entire fiasco. Someone was going to have to explain to him that he had just caused a massive embarrassment for the entire chain of command. The afternoon was about to bring revelations that would shock everyone involved, including an admiral who would soon find himself face-to-face with a living legend that most people thought existed only in classified files and whispered stories among the special operations community. Rodriguez gathered his paperwork and headed for the holding cells, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether this incident became a quiet correction or a career-ending scandal for everyone involved. Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez was walking toward the holding cells with Marcus Thompson's release paperwork when the front desk sergeant intercepted him with an urgent expression. "Chief, we've got a situation developing out front. There's a Navy admiral here demanding to see the prisoner. He's got 2 security details with him, and he doesn't look happy." Rodriguez felt his heart skip a beat. "An admiral? Here? What's his name?" "Rear Admiral James Harrison, sir. He says he's from Naval Special Warfare Command." The name hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. Admiral Harrison was a legend in the special operations community, a former SEAL himself who had risen through the ranks to become one of the most influential figures in naval warfare. If he had come here personally, this situation was even more serious than Rodriguez had imagined. "Escort him to Conference Room A immediately," Rodriguez ordered, "and get Lieutenant Colonel Stevens down here right now." As the sergeant hurried away, Rodriguez tried to compose himself. He had been dreading this moment since his phone calls earlier, but he hadn't expected it to arrive with such overwhelming force. Admiral Harrison was a man in his early 60s, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. When Rodriguez entered the conference room, the admiral was standing with his back to the door, studying the various plaques and certificates on the wall. "Chief Rodriguez, I presume," the admiral said without turning around. His voice carried the quiet authority that comes from decades of leadership in the most dangerous situations imaginable. "Yes, sir. Admiral, I want to apologize for this entire situation. We're processing Senior Chief Thompson's release right now." Admiral Harrison finally turned to face him, and Rodriguez was struck by the intensity of his gaze. "Chief, do you have any idea who you arrested yesterday?" "Sir, I'm beginning to understand the magnitude of our mistake." "Are you really?" The admiral moved closer, his voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow seemed more intimidating than shouting. Let me tell you about Marcus Thompson. In 1993, he led a rescue mission in Somalia that saved the lives of 18 prisoners of war. The operation was so classified that it doesn't officially exist, but it prevented an international incident that could have destabilized the entire region. Rodriguez remained silent, knowing that anything he said would only make things worse. In 1998, the Admiral continued, Senior Chief Thompson spent 46 days behind enemy lines in Kosovo, gathering intelligence that directly led to the capture of 3 war criminals. He was wounded twice during that operation and refused evacuation until the mission was complete. The Admiral paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. In 2001, he was one of the first operators on the ground in Afghanistan. In 2003, he led the team that captured a high-value target whose intelligence prevented a terrorist attack on American soil. The man has more decorations than most generals, and he earned every single one of them in blood. Lieutenant Colonel Stevens entered the room at that moment, slightly out of breath. Admiral Harrison, sir. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Stevens, commanding officer of this installation. Colonel, the Admiral acknowledged with a slight nod. I assume you're here to explain to me how one of our most decorated veterans ended up in a holding cell based on the word of a petty officer who's been in the Navy for less time than some of Thompson's individual deployments. Stevens looked at Rodriguez with an expression that promised a very uncomfortable conversation later. Sir, we're investigating the circumstances that led to this arrest. It appears there was a significant misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The Admiral's voice rose slightly. Colonel, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was gross incompetence compounded by a rush to judgment. Senior Chief Thompson has spent the last 2 decades trying to live a quiet life after giving the best years of his life to this country, and your people arrested him like a common criminal. At that moment, the door opened, and Marcus Thompson walked in, accompanied by his attorney and escorted by 2 MPs. He had been released from his cell, but was still technically in custody pending the completion of the paperwork. The effect of his entrance on Admiral Harrison was immediate and dramatic. The Admiral's stern expression softened, and for a moment he looked like he had seen a ghost. Marcus, the Admiral said quietly, Dear God, what have they done to you? Marcus looked up and recognition dawned in his eyes. Admiral Harrison, I should have known you'd show up eventually. The 2 men embraced briefly, the kind of greeting reserved for warriors who had shared extreme danger and mutual respect. Rodriguez watched in fascination, beginning to understand just how badly he had misjudged the situation. Marcus, I heard about this mess and came as soon as I could. Are you all right? I'm fine, sir. Just a case of mistaken identity that got out of hand. Admiral Harrison turned back to Rodriguez and Stevens, his expression hardening again. Gentlemen, let me make something very clear. You just spent 24 hours treating a national treasure like a common criminal. Senior Chief Thompson has done more for this country than most people will ever know, and he did it without seeking recognition or glory. Sir, Rodriguez interjected, we were acting on what appeared to be credible information. A Navy SEAL reported that Mr. Thompson had been claiming... A Navy SEAL? The Admiral interrupted. Who is this alleged SEAL who made the accusation? Petty Officer Second Class Jake Morrison, sir. The Admiral's expression became thunderous. Get him here, now! 20 minutes later, Jake Morrison stood at attention in the conference room, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. He had clearly been briefed on who Admiral Harrison was, and the young man looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Petty Officer Morrison, the Admiral began, his voice deadly calm. You stand accused of making false statements that resulted in the arrest of a senior enlisted leader. Do you understand the gravity of that charge? Yes, sir, Morrison whispered. Look at me when I'm talking to you, sailor. Morrison's head snapped up. Do you see this man? The Admiral gestured toward Marcus. This is Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson. He completed Bud S training while you were in elementary school. He has been on more combat deployments than you have training exercises. He has killed more enemy fighters than you have met women. Morrison's face was pale, and his hands were visibly shaking. Did you bother to ask for his credentials before you accused him of stolen valor? Did you give him any opportunity to prove his service? Or did you simply decide that he didn't look like your idea of what a SEAL should be? Sir, the witness said. What witness? Admiral Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. Did you personally hear Senior Chief Thompson claim to be a SEAL? No, sir. My friend told me. Your friend. So you destroyed a man's reputation and caused an international embarrassment to the Navy based on second-hand information from your drinking buddy. Marcus finally spoke up. Admiral, if I may, I think there was a genuine misunderstanding here. I was having a conversation with a neighbor about his son's progress in Bud's training. Someone may have overheard part of that conversation and misinterpreted what I was saying. The Admiral looked at Marcus with something approaching amazement. Even now, you're making excuses for this kid. Sir, he made a mistake. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them. Admiral Harrison studied Marcus for a long moment, then turned back to Morrison. Petty officer, you are looking at one of the finest men I have ever had the privilege to know. He has just demonstrated more grace and professionalism in 2 minutes than you have shown in your entire career. You will apologize to him immediately, and then you will report to your commanding officer for disciplinary action. Morrison stepped forward, tears of shame evident in his eyes. Senior Chief Thompson, sir, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I let my emotions get the better of my judgment and I caused you serious harm. There's no excuse for what I did. Marcus extended his hand. Apology accepted, petty officer. Use this as a learning experience. The real enemy is out there, not in here. After Morrison was dismissed, Admiral Harrison addressed the room. Gentlemen, this incident will be thoroughly investigated. I want to know how a decorated veteran ended up in handcuffs based on unsubstantiated accusations. I want to know what training your people receive about stolen valor investigations. And I want to know what steps you're taking to ensure this never happens again. He turned to Marcus. Senior Chief, I owe you a personal apology on behalf of the entire Navy. This should never have happened to you. Admiral, with respect, this isn't about me. It's about making sure that other veterans don't have to go through this kind of ordeal. There are thousands of quiet professionals out there who served with distinction but don't advertise their service. They shouldn't have to carry their DD-214s everywhere they go to prove their legitimacy. Admiral Harrison nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true leader. Marcus, I have a proposition for you. The Navy is developing a new training program for identifying stolen valor versus legitimate service members. Would you consider consulting on that project? Marcus smiled for the first time since his arrest. I'd be honored, sir. As the group prepared to leave, Admiral Harrison pulled Rodriguez aside. Chief, let me give you some free advice. Real warriors don't usually advertise their service. They're more likely to deflect attention than seek it. The quiet man in the corner who doesn't want to talk about his time in the military? He's probably seen more action than the guy wearing camouflage to the grocery store and telling everyone about his supposed exploits. Rodriguez nodded. I understand, sir. This has been a learning experience for all of us. See that it is. As Marcus Thompson walked out of the military police station, a free man, he was accompanied by one of the most senior admirals in the Navy. The contrast was not lost on the gathering crowd of military personnel and civilians who had heard about the incident. Later that evening, Marcus sat in his backyard with his wife Sarah, finally able to laugh about the entire ordeal. The story would become legendary within the special operations community, but for Marcus, it was just another reminder of why he preferred his quiet, civilian life. The young SEAL who had caused all the trouble would go on to have a distinguished career, carrying with him the lesson that judgment should always be tempered with humility. and Admiral Harrison would ensure that new training protocols were implemented to prevent similar incidents in the future. But for Marcus Thompson, the most important outcome was the confirmation that his country still honored the service of its quiet heroes, even when they chose to fade into the background rather than seek the spotlight. He had spent decades in the shadows, protecting others from threats they would never know existed. Now, in his retirement, he was content to remain in those shadows, secure in the knowledge that when it mattered most, the truth had prevailed over prejudice and assumption. The legend would continue to live quietly among them, unrecognized by most, but deeply respected by those who truly understood the meaning of service.